Most of you know that it is thanks to the love and support of this community that we were able to build a village for special needs children out in Tanzania. That village now provides a safe and loving home to nearly 200 children that were living in crisis. Most of these children are special needs, but a lot of these children were homeless, and the majority have no parents or guardians in this world other than the family that this community has allowed us to create. Everything that we do to support these children is made possible by this community and those who choose to share what they can and get involved and become, as I often call it, in their own way, a percentage of the parental role for these little ones. For those of you who are already partnering with us, thank you for the love and support. But for those of you who don't know about it, everything that we do is made possible thanks to partners, those who choose to partner with our family and with it make everything that we do possible and keep our doors open for the next children who need some help or a safe and loving family home. If you'd like to hear more about our partnership program, you can do so by visiting www.sharetanzania.com/partnership. Thank you for all of the love and support, guys. We couldn't do this without you. God bless. The other day, I was with an elderly Christian missionary who has seen a lot here in Tanzania. And I was explaining how, following a sequence of visions and nudges from Spirit, I managed to bring myself out of a situation that could have resulted in harm and violence. And as I told her, she said, sometimes with Christ, all you have to do is breathe. And this is something that I have tried to communicate. And with this video, I want to connect you all to that power, that source code access, the programmer that overwrites all things, the fallen programmer, the demonic, the fallen ones. They too are writing codes into reality, codes of manifestation of creation. And we must harmonically attune from a 3D base to the source code programmer and rewrite reality. But interestingly, in religion, in Christianity, many people, they lose track of this. For what they don't recognize is that before the advent of thought, before the advent of speech and language, before the advent of humanity using words to point at the sacred or the Christ or the highest of high, was still present. It was still present, it was tangible, it was felt, it was known, it was moving throughout reality. But there were no words and labels as yet to point at it, to hold on to it. And yet it was still here. And so to channel into this 3D realm the power of Christ, the wisdom, the love of Christ, we must transcend to the source that existed before thought, language, and memory. Thought, language, and memory came after. And we must learn the ancient way to open up so as the vessel we are, through the choice of free will, embraces that the vessel can be overtaken and animated by the Christ, by the source code programmer. Inside this reality, there are those two paths. There is the human intelligence animated by the connection to the space beyond thought and language. And there you will find the Christ. Excuse me. The Christ waits for us there to expand our hearts, to make us grow in compassion, empathy, to animate our intelligence, to allow us to connect to the all-knowingness of Creator and make choices that have the flavor, the interference with the wisdom of the all-knowingness of Creator, which is born through the human vessel intuitively. The other path is the one that is most common, where humanity becomes deranged from thinking about thought and nothing else. We build images of who we are in thought. We label the world with thought, and then we try to function from that created space of thought and language. And there the power of the Christ is not whole. It's not full, for it's refracted by the power of your words and your thoughts into various reduced avenues. Here we stand in a fallen world, a world where suffering is being harnessed as a preferred drug fuel source for a fallen species, a collection, I'm going to say, of fallen species. They are all governed and orchestrated by one meticulous planner that is setting forth the enslavement of humanity as it has. We ourselves are a slave species. The hardware within us that generates an image of who we are in thought disconnects the soul awareness entombed in that enslaved body away from the reality of its allness, and with it its power in Christ. The hardware that was brought into humanity in the fall means that our soul awareness, the true us, enters the body, goes into the hardware builds an illusion of a self, and the illusion of a self becomes the operating system by which we function in this world. That operating system, the fallen operating system, the dualistic one, it cannot feel the presence of God. The supernatural presence and love of God is absent in that hardware. And as it is absent in that hardware, we begin to, with the longing from deep inside, seek God through the hardware. And yet, as soon as that hardware is activated within you, the frequencies of God are separated. That is why you cannot pursue God without humility. Humility is what? Humility is the absence of the hardware that generates the image of self. In that space, the vessel returns to this moment in the same manner a tree and a bird has no hardware separating it from the flow of Creator's heart. And we re-enter that flow of creation. And we surrender to the will of the Creator and just say to it, this body belongs to that. And even the one that may say the body belongs to that is absent. It is a silent surrender. It is the absence of a character that feels it owns the body to surrender it to God that the surrender ignites and takes place. There is humility, and God can only guide the humble, those where the hardware is absent, where it's not firing, where it's not telling you that you are a nationality, a John, whatever other spiritual paraphernalia, religious paraphernalia you're putting on yourself. So long as that hardware is activated and telling you that you are something other than a unified child of the Almighty, which is known without words, for the hardware that brought in words and language is after the fact of man's connection. Let's imagine in Eden they had no words, and it was all done intuitively through the connection of the heart. And the fallen state brings in the introduction of the hardware that makes us label everything and segregate everything. And as we do that, we grow in distance between ourselves and the wisdom and the light and the guidance of the Christ. Now the hardware will take even your relationship with Christ and build an image of self. But again, so long as the hardware is active, the love is not known, for the hardware refracts it, moves it around in different directions. And so when the hardware is put to sleep, the love can manifest through you, and that love is a power, it's a force, it's not an emotion, it's not an attachment, and it is beyond what the world has to offer you. It is beyond the refracted states of energy that the hardware brings you into. In that space where the hardware that builds an image of a meanness is not, in that space where we connect with the Christ as we did prior to the introduction in reality of words and language, and we no longer try to contain it and verbalize it and label it and hold it and own it. Rather, we bathe in its presence, in its love. In that space, the supernatural power of man wakes up. The supernatural ability of man is born. For as he was in this world, so are you, John 1. As Jesus was, he had supernatural power. Where is yours? Where is mine? I have seen it now in my life. I know I have it. I know that that supernatural power exists. I know that it's true that those who truly let go of the hardware and return back to spirit, or let go of the flesh, as Jesus said, and return back to spirit, those that overcome the world and reunite in harmonic attunement, plug themselves into the highest dimension, for they've overcome the world, they've overcome the slave technology of the body, and in that elevated state they reach to the highest of high and open a channel whereby which the highest of high's creation codes can re-enter the fallen reality and start to mask, to write over the top of the fallen codes. There you will cast out the demons that have power over man if they exist within the hardware. Within the hardware, your frequency is distorted. They can control you there, for you are caught in a place where you don't see reality, you see thought. And without thought, reality is born into your senses and you become lovingly aware of the whole broad picture. It expands around you. When that attunement takes place, and that attunement is not simple, and once you reach it, you don't stay there effortlessly. But once it does, you begin to come to a reality where the source code is sending from upstream in the river of light and code into this reality. Codes of creation and programs of creation that will take hold in the 3D. And when they take hold in the 3D, the fallen programmer that is of a lesser frequency level, further down in the river of light, we can say, that which creates from knowledge and with it ignorance, not all-knowingness, its codes do not take hold with those codes. It's why those who truly align in the Christ power can heal the sick. It's why they can create from a space of love that says, I'm going to create this, but I need, want, and expect nothing in return for the image of me in the hardware as I do. This is the love of Christ, and it's accessed not through attachment to religious images, not through attachment to spiritual images, not through attachment to nationalities, not even through attachment to relationship, to your children, to your wife, to your husband. It is accessed, as Jesus said, unless you hate your mother, your father, etc. It's meaning that the hardware's attachment of the energy of the cosmos's love into relationship will diminish and become the enemy of the power of Christ inside man's body. The reality is that to come to your children with that love, where there is no center point within you, there's no creation of a meanness inside of you, is the only time you will truly love your children without a condition. And they deserve that love. The world deserves that love. It is the love of God, and you must open up to allow the love of God into this world. If not, it does not come. It is not animated inside the human story. And you may argue that you love your children without condition, but it's not true. Your condition is relationship, and that love, however beautiful and pure it can be, is distorted. It's not the healing power of the Christ energy. And the healing power of the Christ energy is the highest love. Here, doing what we are doing, without that Christ energy, nothing would be happening. Nothing. It is the architect of it all. It is the one that gave birth to all of the ideas of what we are doing. It is the one that has given the vision to this human sitting here talking, and the training the last decade to solve the problem for the invisible children of Tanzania and the whole of continent of Africa and the world beyond. Those invisible suffering little beings caught in a fallen world where the light really cannot access them. And it can only access them if humanity is not endlessly distracted by the pursuits of the world and entertainment and the distraction of that, and returns back to the space where the human organisms we are, the soul awareness within, say to the Creator, "Thy will be done. This body is yours, come what may." And when you enter that space and you hold that power of Christ, it will be difficult. Your legs will shake. You will bleed, you will sweat. Your heart will be broken into pieces, potentially every single week, sometimes it feels like. And you, in that retrospect, as it says in Christianity, will take up your cross. It will say in the scripture that you were crucified with him, and the image of that suffering somehow in the fallen world, if you look at the stories of missionaries, of saints, of those who choose a love that says, "To love my fellow man is of more value than self-preservation, for I wish to awaken this fallen world into the presence of the Christ love that I know." In the fallen world, you will be enveloped by darkness. And as that darkness sits heavy around you, it's important to look around if it looks so dark and recognize if everything appears dark, maybe it's because you are the light. If the world appears dark, you are the light. Let the light out. Conquer your fear. Fear will not allow you to let the light out. And fear is what? It's the hardware that you are afflicted with. All fear is simply a thought. No matter what the details are, no matter what the notions are, no matter what the hardware is forcing you to imagine, to derail you from the walk of faith, to say that you are the only one who can protect the children that God entrusted you to raise. They are not ours, they are God's. And I see that with clarity here, for I have been blessed to raise children that are biologically not my own. But the reality is they are borrowed from Creator. And we must move into that space of faith. We must come into that place and allow that true love to access the lives of our children. Not a distorted love, because in that distorted love you will infect them with your fear and with the hardware of the fallen state. Doing what we are here. Forgive the noise. Doing what we are here. I have seen endlessly that the fallen world will come against those who choose that love. It will make you sick. It will have people betray you. It will come after your life. It may even murder, as I have witnessed with dear friends of mine. 2 of them were murdered by the fallen. Manifestations in the world that just made no sense, placed upon people who lived in the notion that love of another and bringing up this world into the light of Christ was of higher value than self-preservation. And I believe upon that road with all of my heart. I believe upon that 100%. It is of little consequence for the life I live. Self-preservation matters to get the vision into place, but if self-preservation became the top priority, I would have quit long ago. I would be relaxing on the beach, I would be relaxing in the clubs, socializing, I would be dining out every day, I would be worrying more about my appearance and the aesthetics of my body. I certainly wouldn't have continued in illness, etc., to fight for what I had seen during my long fast, in the instance of this human sitting here talking, that I had been lured into a world that really didn't have true value compared to the eternal space that I accessed when I overcame the world. The programs of the world, the hunger, the lusts of the flesh. During that long fast, I saw through all of them as just a pittance in comparison to the allness of transcending it. We are here, and we have a choice to live out 90 years without ever stepping into the battle, and the world will happily entertain you and distract you for that whole period of your life. But I believe that on that day where you leave your body, and you look back and you see the suffering of the world, and you see those that you could have reached but didn't, because you were not fulfilled within with the love of Christ, for you never managed to allow the hardware to go to sleep. And you see the suffering around you of the supernatural power to heal, to cast out the tormenting energies that surround us and access people. And you never did it because you were on holiday, and you were watching Netflix, or you never overcame your fear, or you pursued the desires and dreams of technological pleasure, which the majority of mankind is doing. I am certain that you will, from the state of no distortion of the hardware that builds itself, regret that. You will regret that road. There's nothing wrong with building your material abundance. There's nothing wrong with pursuing the road of success in the world. But if you look back and you see the times where it blinkered you to those that you could have helped, I'm certain only regret will wash in your heart. I'm certain of it. The fallen ones are here. Don't join them. They believe that they must live only for the image of a self generated in thought and its desires, its plans. And it is in direct opposition to the Creator animating your intelligence and your body. Be spiritually reborn. And the one that asks how to get there, the one that says, what do I do next? That voice belongs to the hardware of the slave technology, and is the causality that process which takes place naturally, without the interference of that hardware and its desires and its perversions and its indulgences in the worldly desires and the selling of the essence of life into the comfortable prison cell of worldly desire. That voice that says what's next actually belongs to the hardware, and the process is automatic, and that automatic process of you being born into the power of Christ, where it's in your hands and you can change the world, and you can change the world. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you are. You can say, I have no money, nor did I, but money was not the God of my situation anymore. God is bigger than money. God is bigger than economy. God is bigger than your fear. God is bigger than... It has to be that way. You must access that place. And when you come to there, when you find that space, you'll become unstoppable. And the enemy will fear you. For you have unplugged from the matrix of slavery. And Satan only fears that. It only fears those who put the hardware in sleep mode. for they are the Christ walking among humanity. They are the power of God inside the fallen matrix, and they are unpredictable, they are uncontrollable, and they are more powerful than the fallen. The power of Christ, it's yours. It's there, it's in you. And you're not going to let it rip. You're not going to let it burst out into the world through thought. Only through the understanding that Christ was present before thought had a word for it will that power light up your intelligence and your body, and will the supernatural carry through you and build wondrous, miraculous and compassionate things in the name of God and God alone. And you will pray and it will be answered. And you will see what I speak of. You will look back upon the world and say, what a meaningless folly they've got most of us dragged into here, pursuing these dead-end traps of pleasure that will never ever allow the vitality within us to be built up enough that the intelligence can be animated by the frequency of the source code programmer, the Christ. And when you connect to the source code, you bring into this world a certain power, a magic. And that whole process of the hardware going to sleep is grace. It's not earned by the hardware in its doing this. It's grace. And then when you enter the space without the hardware, you are lovingly aware of all things, and you simply follow the guidance of the Creator. You don't plan, you don't scheme, you don't analyze, you don't teach people how to self-improve. It's all a big deception and trap. You connect to the Spirit. Through grace, the hardware goes to sleep, and you follow it blindly with all of your heart and will, with a state of loving awareness, not tension. And that's the walk of faith. And as you continue to do that, and you stay in the walk of faith, lovingly aware of every crumb of time that passes by, you become the embodiment of the power of Christ. And greater works than He you will do, for He will have gone to the Father. Jesus said that. Are your works greater than His yet? Are you even on a road where it's a potential that your works may be greater than His? Or are you still caught in a religious ego that says, how dare you say your works will be greater than Jesus, when Jesus Himself said it's possible, said it will be so. Not because of the power of an image that you label with thought of a John, an Englishman, or whatever you're labeling, but because the power of Christ can move through the human organism sitting here speaking, that formerly I misidentified as those things, and can only move there when the hardware of the slave tech, which desperately wants to build an image of a meanness, is absent. And there, decision and movement become one, and Christ takes the life in the body, and the power of Christ is made manifest in the shape and form that you once identified with as your personal history. It's very hard to point at it with words, but I continue to do the level best that I can to make it so. I will leave it there. I love you all. God bless.